That light is bright. I'm not putting down my beer because these things are like gold in here. Okay, so my name's Damin. I do real estate development. You probably think I'm going to talk about greed and pillaging the earth and everything, but actually I'm going to try and tell you how there's a right way to do this thing. It's about triple bottom line, and we can actually do it right. So you hear all this talk about the green economy. The reality is that buildings suck about 3/4 of the energy, or excuse me, the electricity in the world. You say, okay, well, that's not energy. Okay, so they suck half the energy in America. So where does the energy go? If you take a look at this, you see about 25% of it is equipment. That's all those laptops you guys have open. About half of it is heating and cooling. That's because we all think we have to be 72 degrees all the time. So the moral of the story is put a sweatshirt on. So I was down in LA doing a project, and they had this huge debate over what produced all the pollution. Everyone thought the cow was shitting and having all the methane come out of it caused the pollution. Then all these other people thought the cars were doing it all, and the reality is it wasn't any of those, it was the buildings. So there's all this talk about green money coming out and all this infrastructure that you have. The real question is, what are we going to do with it, and can we do the right thing with it and invest it instead of just spending it? So here's what we got to do. I have a time limit here. Okay, so what we have to do is invest in long-term assets, right? We can't just invest in short-term liabilities. We have to do things that have long-term returns on our investment. So what's going on is that there's this infrastructure and these grids, so we all pay for that. Those are tax dollars. So if I build a building and it sucks all this energy out of it, there's no use in putting money into the infrastructure because it's just going to go right into the buildings. There's no real return on that investment. Okay, so we've got all these people talking about stuff. Oh, you can't see that. Okay, so that's Paris. You have to have Paris Hilton in your presentation. She's talking about being green, and this is T. Boone Pickens. I love this guy. He wants to get rich, and he thinks that wind turbines are going to do that, which is a pretty cool idea that something like that can do it. So what we really have to do is have an enlightened shift, right? We have to have a paradigm shift. We have to stop, take a second, and think about the right way to do this. And a bunch of little catchphrases here. So we're in Portland. This is a pretty cool place, right? We have an urban growth boundary. We've planned all these things. We have this wonderful foundation with which to build. Everyone knows about Portland. People come from around the world to check out Portland, our built environment, and why it's cool. It's got all these neat things. We've got a Max line. We're the Prius capital of the country. So we have this ability to actually make a change. You have the power. People know about us. We can do something here. We're ranked and all these things. Everyone knows about us. Everyone's coming to this town. But the reality is what we have to do is not be the envy of the country. We have to change that and make it seem like everyone has to be Portland. That's what's going to actually make a difference. So we have to make people think that everyone has to be Portland because that will change the world. So here's some examples. Building on the left is the most sustainable high-rise office building in the country. That's in the South Waterfront in Portland. Building on the right is the most sustainable high-rise residential building in the whole country. That's in the Brewery Blocks right next to the Pearl District. Both those buildings are 50% more efficient than your typical building. But we got to go farther. So we got to get to these buildings not doing anything bad. So that means we got to change. No one likes change. Change is hard, but someone's got to try. Someone's got to start this. So we need buildings that don't consume any energy. These are called living buildings. These are buildings that are self-sufficient. They don't take anything out of the grid. They're totally net zero is the term. This is hard. Okay, so this is our goal. We need buildings that produce more energy than they consume and consume more waste than they produce. We've already figured out the second thing. An example is we can take all the rainwater and use it to flush toilets. So all this stuff is totally possible. It's not that hard. I work at this little company. LEED is this system that ranks buildings by how sustainable they are. There's all these different levels of it. So we've done about $5 billion worth of these kind of buildings. We have more LEED buildings than employees. We're not that big. This isn't that hard. It can be done. So what can you do? Vote. You can make policy changes. You have to let the people know that are in charge that this matters. You have to invent new technology. We need energy that's cheaper to produce. You got to think about this. Go to farmers markets. Think about where do you go to work every day and what kind of office building your companies are in. So here's my little catchphrase. We actually have something that's already going. You have the power. We're in Portland. This is the coolest place on earth. We're already thinking this way. We're already doing these things. We need to spread it out. So That's it. I actually finished ahead.